Alright, hey, what's up everybody? Going to be talking to you guys a little bit today about my first week spent in Guatemala. First week I spent in Guatemala, obviously I was traveling north from El Salvador, and I went up to a place called Xela, where I took a 3-day trek with the Quetzal trekkers down to Lago Atilan, which is a small lake that was formed by an old volcano that has a bunch of cities or small towns around it. And then from there I went and spent a few days in Antigua. So that's pretty much what the journey I'm going to be talking to you guys about today is. Right now, I'm one step ahead of that. I'm in El Mirrador, Guatemala, which is the largest temple complex, Mayan temple complex, known to date that they have been able to find. And we're in the El Tigre pyramid or temple. It's the second largest pyramid on site. And I just snuck off in the afternoon up here to shoot this video. Thought it'd be really cool to have an on-site video of me talking about my Guatemala adventures. So basically, first notable thing that happened when I got into Guatemala is I crossed the border, dropped my bags off in Antigua, and headed up north towards Xela. All of this was on shuttles because I couldn't get to Xela in a day by the evening time in time to start the trek on Saturday morning, if I was to be taking chicken buses and hitchhiking and all the works. So got into Xela. I needed to pay the Quetzal trekkers for my trip, and I had no cash, which turned out to be quite a challenge. I've never had any issues ever before with taking money out of a bank. So I go down to the banks on a Friday night in Xela, which is a pretty large city, and I can't seem to get money out of any ATMs, even though they're working for the locals. And I have money in my bank account, and everything's going to shit. I haven't eaten since about noon, and it's about 9:30 at night. I woke up super early that morning at around 5:30 to get on a shuttle to get into Guatemala. So I panicked, and I phoned my family, and I asked them if they could transfer me, or I asked my family, actually, I asked my brother if he could call my bank and asked them if there was anything wrong with my bank card, because the Wi-Fi, for some reason, everything was stacking up against me and was absolute shit as well, so I couldn't get a clear call into BMO. And so obviously asking my brother to call my bank on my behalf while I was in a third world country sparked some red flags, and the family started to panic largely about what was going to happen. Yeah, long story short, my entire family got involved. My dad pulled a whole bunch of money out of my bank account to make sure that I wasn't going to get robbed of thousands of dollars, and left what I had claimed I had needed, which was about $350 in my bank account, so that if I actually did need money that I could get it. And I still to date haven't been able to get any money out of a Guatemalan ATM, but I got up the next morning and I went down to the hostel I was staying at, which was the same place the Quetzal trekkers were in, and was said, hey, I couldn't get any money out of the ATM, like I can't pay you, I can pay you in USD, and they obviously weren't too happy about that. I had some cash on me that was USD, so they went over to the Quetzal trekkers guys, we got that sorted out, and it turns out the whole time I could have just paid the Quetzal trekkers by card, so I paid them by card, and we went on this amazing 3-day hike trek from small town to small town into basically the most rural, or some very rural areas of Guatemala that are just kind of along the Pan American Highway. And we took this guerrilla route, basically, back when they were in war times, that the guerrilla warfare people would have been taking to go from Xela to the lake and back, in these backcountry trails. Now they're used as like farming trails where horses and local villages will walk on those trails to get from one village to the next, versus going on the Pan American Highway on a chicken bus or whatever not. So the first day, we got up really early and took a shuttle to the edge of town, and then we started hiking. And there was a lot more elevation gain than I thought there was going to be on all of the days, but I think the coolest thing about the first couple days was just the brief moments we got to walk through some very high land grasslands and up into some really awesome villages, and seeing the villages from a distance and walking right through them. Very small villages, 100 maybe-ish people living in a village at any time. And eventually we got, just before lunch, to this viewpoint, and usually in the highlands there it's very clouded in, and we got the opportunity, obviously very lucky, that it was very clear. And I've got some wonderful photos of this place where you can see like pretty much all of the major volcanoes in the area all in one viewpoint, which is extremely rare. Everything from the largest summit in Central America, which is blanking on the volcano's name, and then you have Fuego and Agua and Atilan. No, it's the lake. You had, oh, I'm blanking on all the names of the volcanoes. This is bad, but I'll show you the photo, and I'll make sure I point out in the photo which lakes and volcanoes we could see. But basically, we could see the entire landscape that we were going to be trekking for the next 2 days, and this was about halfway through the first day, which was super awesome and cool experience. We had an amazing group of people, which I think the Quetzal Trekkers does a really good job of fostering a great energy and community for the 3-day treks that they host. And the food was amazing, so definitely recommend trekking with them if you guys have the opportunity when you're down here, if you're ever down here. And for me, the experience was just really cool to be able to meld with a group of, we were 12 people. They do max 24 people on these tours, and there was everyone from, you know, an older gentleman, he must have been in his mid to late 50s, down to a 21-year-old guy, Zane from Calgary, who was just taking a year off between university years and volunteering actually with the Quetzal Trekker community, and that was his first guided trip. So we got a chance to mingle with all sorts of people in this trip and really get a chance to, again, just like bounce conversations, bounce ideas off of these people as you're walking through trails for hours and hours and hours with them every day. And by the time we got to the first place, the first night, we stayed in a municipal hall in a small town. And in this small town, there was this massive wall just outside of the town, which looked very climbable and very appealing. Obviously, nobody had climbed it because it was in a pretty random location, I would say. But that was the first thing that came to mind for me. And as the sun set into this high valley, everybody was offered the opportunity to go into these saunas. I guess it was more of a steam. And this guy in the village had built kind of like 3 large pizza ovens. So I mean, yeah, put into perspective, you're offered to go into a pizza oven to have a steam shower, middle of nowhere. Kind of sounds suspicious, but we were like, you know what, hell, this sounds like an absolutely great idea. This sounds like great after trekking for a whole day, and it reminds me of the steams that my brother makes when we're out camping. So I said, fuck it, let's do this thing. And we went into one of these steams, and myself and one of my friends, Jack, who I met along the way, who's an Irish man living in Vancouver now, which is super cool to meet more people who are traveling and also living in my city, is super awesome. But we got into this steam, and yeah, it was just a dark pizza oven essentially that you could really huddle into. There was a couple of pots, one big, really big warm water, like really hot, scalding hot water, some cold water, and then this middle bucket, which was kind of where you mixed everything into the temperature you desired, and then you could just dump it on your face and all over your body. It was pretty great. And the next day, we got up relatively early, had some breakfast in this small town, again just having very typical Guatemalan food, and then off we went to the next destination. And the next place we were staying at was called Don Pablo's, or Donnie P's, and he was this minister in another small town, which was super cool to be, you know, in a person's home. Like, so the first night we were staying in a municipal hall. The second night we literally stayed in this guy's house, and his big dining room, they had sat us all in for dinner, turned into our sleeping arrangement hall. And the trek there that day was a little bit more rigorous. We had like a lot more exposed on dirt roads, logging roads, things like that, so the heat was a lot more intense. We did this thing called Record Hill, which is just a really steep hill essentially in the middle of the trek, which some people like to race up. I didn't really see the purpose in racing up the hill, so I decided to just enjoy my time on the way up the hill and enjoy the views. And it was just like spectacular countryside, rolling hills for most of the trek, and then eventually we got into cornfields and pea fields, and most of the cornfields at this time of year, dry season, they were really dead and very eerie. I think I got some photos of that, but that was kind of a notable thing. You're looking at this and you're just saying, dang, like, this isn't permaculture. This is definitely quite the opposite, where they're gonna, burn these fields down and replant a new crop of corn here, and that's how they go about making their living, or producing from the land. And even walking through one of the towns, I remember seeing like a small batch of corn that was just laid out on someone's yard. Like the entirety of the yard was covered in corn, unhusked, that was drying out. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like that's such a simple life. I've complicated my life so much by all the things that I think about in my head, and it was just quite a special experience to be very detached from all of that complication as you walked through and you checked out what these people did for a living, or how they lived themselves. And yeah, once we got to this minister's house, Donnie P's house, basically we just sat down, enjoyed the evening. They had a campfire. We grabbed some guitars. I got a chance to play some guitar, jam with some other people, which was super fun. And then on the third day, we woke up pretty much at the crack of dawn. It was like 3:45 or 4 o'clock in the morning when we woke up, and we hiked about an hour to catch sunrise over the Lago Atilan, which was super, super, super cool. What a special basin that was. I mean, you have volcanoes basically surrounding the entire lake, and the lake itself was created back in the day from a huge explosion of a volcano that used to literally be where the lake was. So the crater of the lake is what the volcano used to be. Just puts into kind of perspective how big this volcano was. And yeah, that was just another great morning, another bunch of really amazing chats with everybody who we were trekking with, and getting a chance to just watch the sunrise, take some really cool photos. The stars at night, or morning, I guess, that time, were really cool. And just getting a chance to walk by moonlight through the side country hills of Guatemala was definitely something that's a notable experience for me. I love walking, especially in those kind of try and kill environments. And then yeah, we actually started heading back down into San Pedro, and at that point there was this helicopter that kept making passes of us in the hillside, and we had police escorts that were following us from the hillside on top of the sunrise down to San Pedro, because in the past there had been I guess reports of bandits, which were basically just people who are working in the fields with machetes who saw opportunity to rob tourists if they were being ridiculous or whatever, and or being opportunistic. And what had happened in this case was quite literally not that. We thought maybe they were running a safety drill in case something like that had happened, but it was quite widely covered on popular news. Apparently there was this British girl who had a bit of a psychosis background, and she had done some drugs in San Pedro, and she had been hanging out in San Pedro actually for about a month or two, really being very dingy and dodgy and not creating any value for the community. And eventually she was last seen taking a musical instrument off of a stage and walking into the hills. And the day that we hiked down, it was the 8th day she was missing, and they were still looking for her. And later that afternoon, I guess there was reports that she was found, her body was found, and she unfortunately didn't survive the experience. I'm sure that everybody can learn something from that, but also take a moment to appreciate that sometimes these cities, even though the media might have painted this picture of Guatemala being a dangerous place because people have gone missing and have been killed or XYZ, generally speaking, these places are actually very safe, and it's just the user of the environment that misuses the area and basically goes and does something harmful to themselves. And so that was really interesting to be in a space where this thing was blowing up all over European news, and all the travelers who are European were getting messages from home being like, are you safe? Are you okay? Well, any update? Do you know anything from the locals about this crazy thing that's happening in Guatemala? And everyone was like, this is crazy. There's just one girl who kind of had a loose screw, and she did some more drugs, and off she went into the woods, and that's kind of how it ended. From my perspective, or as much as I know. I mean, I probably don't know the full story by any means, but it was just cool to see, these kinds of events unfold in real time in places where you are, and you see it, and you're like, wow, it's not really that dangerous. And that's how that goes. And so we spent the day in San Pedro and had some amazing falafels at the falafel house there. And then the next morning, I got on a shuttle from there and I went over to Antigua, where I was going to be working for the week, and basically just exploring the colonial town that everyone had been talking so highly of. So before I left San Pedro, I picked up a couple pieces of Guatemalan swag that were very traditional, a blanket and some shorts with the very traditional kind of make and patterns. And I headed off to Antigua, where I got a chance to just roam the streets. I actually got my pants fixed. I have enough proficient Spanish that I found some super small sewing guy who fixed my pants for like $2 and patched them up, a whole bunch of patches. I think there's like 2 or 3 patches he had to do. And he was like deep into this gong show of a supermarket, and I started filming videos of me walking around these streets because I just found them so fascinating, and everything was so low risen, and there was volcanoes all around, and it was quite a picturesque city. Great vibe to be around, lots of tourism you could see, and everyone was super friendly in that town as well. So that pretty much summarizes the adventures that I've been going on in Guatemala for the last week. Next video I will be shooting, I'll shoot a video about the trek that I've been going on in the last, in the last 5 days now, approximately, to El Mirrador, Guatemala, in my Birkenstocks. And just so you guys can see, my Birkenstocks are most definitely in better condition, or have been in better condition, but they're making their way through this very long trek. And yeah, we're here hanging out at the El Tigre temple. So thanks guys for listening to this one take video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll catch you guys on the other side.